I call to order the Board of Trustees regular meeting for October 18, 2022, and the time is 6:01. Trustee Johnson, would you like to give the invocation?
Yeah, you want to stay up here? Right hands. Dear Lord, thank you for this day, and thank you for allowing us to come together as a group and meet for our township and for our general area here. I pray that you be with those who protect our rights, who protect our lives and our freedoms, and that you be with those loved ones as they are missed at being away. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Ms. Varian.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Ms. McKee?
Here. I move to adopt the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, I move to amend the agenda to include the advertising of the open road crew position under new business. Is there a second?
I'll second to hear. What do you want to do? Advertise for the position?
Yeah, we lost an employee on the 5th, so to maintain our full crew, we need to replace him. So I'm suggesting that we offer to advertise for his replacement and I forwarded the suggested advertisement. It's the same as previously, except excluding the provision of no felonies, because due to the, I believe it's the Ohio Fair Hiring Act, that you cannot exclude those with felonies at the initial application process. You may have taken into consideration before, so that was removed, but otherwise it's the same as we advertised earlier this year. And winter's coming upon us. We definitely need a full crew to service the residents. It's a safety matter, but also I think just to ensure that we can, again, do all our duties. We've had a couple of our employees come down with COVID, and if that happens again during winter, we don't want to be understaffed when that happens. Last winter, earlier this year, we were down to 2 people on the entire road crew. And if we would have had a bad storm, that would have been dangerous. So I think we need to maintain a full crew. It's been working out great with 4 road crew members and then Bubba as their supervisor, and to address the needs of the township. So I would like to add that to the agenda.
I would also like to recommend that when the resumes and applications come into the township, maybe we should have it coming to all trustees. I would recommend that.
Okay. You want to put on agenda?
Well, this is on the agenda, then we'll determine it, but I put it in there coming to me because
I'm fine with that.
so I can, and I share information with the township and others. So
Yeah,
I would share that.
Yeah, we all share. Okay, so we're gonna,
Right now, you're trying to decide if it should go on the agenda.
Under
Correct.
what? New business, right?
Under new
Yeah.
business.
Okay.
So unless there's any other discussion, I'd call for a question.
call for the question.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes,
Now you need a roll call on the motion as amended.
I'd like to make a
She has to make a roll call to
roll
adopt
call
the agenda as
to
amended.
amend the agenda to add that. So is there a second?
No, you already have the roll call. You roll call to adopt the agenda,
Yeah.
Jeff seconded it, so now
So,
you're going to roll call
for
to adopt the agenda as amended.
I
Mr.
will-
Evans?
Julie?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. So the adoption of the minutes, which Lord went on to get those completed. So we're not ready to adopt the minutes for September 7th, 13th, 20th, or October 4th. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to public comments. So if there's any public comments, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
Judy Kathmeyer, 29 Roma Court. And it said, I look forward to the trustee discussion this evening concerning the Refugee Road Improvement and Stabilization Project. The delay of this open discussion over this past months is disturbing on several levels. At some point, Etna Township entered into an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with Pataskala to share the extensive costs of this project. Apparently, the next step in the MOU is negotiation between the two parties, and that has yet to take place. I hope that this discussion tonight will result in taking that next step with our adjoining neighbor. I also suspect that Pataskala and others are questioning the trust factor when it comes to non-binding and binding agreements with Etna Township, and that's very disturbing to me. This is totally on you trustees and must be repaired if we expect to have viable relationships going forward. There's a lot at stake here for our township, our residents, and our future. Please work together and form a bond that all of us can respect and support. And finally, I would like to apologize for my outburst at the last meeting. I was clearly out of order. Truthful, but out of order. A reprimand from the chair would have sufficed. The intimidation stunt was unnecessary and unsuccessful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gifford.
Any other public comments?
Steve Perkins, 7352 Palmer Road. I'm a member of the Citizens Advisory Council, and one of the things that came up was we need to do a mailer for a survey, and brought back something that prior to this board sitting that I found to be problematic, and I still find it to be problematic, and I think there's something that can be done with it at this point, and then long term as well. That is the use of waste-to-ways mailer, which in the past has been used as a way to inappropriately disseminate information to the community on behalf of board members when getting close to re-election time, which I thought was highly problematic. I won't get into the agreement that makes that possible in the first place, but either way I think it's a bad idea. So as members of this advisory council, we do need to send out a mailer for the survey. I would highly recommend that we avoid using waste-to-ways mailer to do that, because I believe it opens up an avenue that goes all the way back to the township setting up a cozy agreement for one particular company. Nobody here has negotiated on my behalf for HVAC service, so I don't really think they need to negotiate on my behalf for my trash pickup either. I just want to point that out. So I'm sure at some point we'll be coming to the board for the cost of the mailer. I recommend that we just treat that as any other ordinary expense. It's not a great number, but I would like to avoid entangling commitments with township vendors that allow them to issue our public notices for us as a nicety to our township when that can be abused. The only other thing I wanted to bring up too, going along that same line, over 6,700 people voted in our last election for township trustee, and it bothers me greatly when I see people that are elected appointing themselves to boards. That means that there's at least 6,700 other people that are members of this board, past members of this board or whatever, that are appointing themselves to other township business. So especially without being asked whether they would like to be part of that process. So with that, I will, let's see, I got about 30 seconds left. Let's see if I can come up with something else. Otherwise, I just want to point out that sometimes when you're doing this, I learned as a teacher a long time ago that 10 seconds to you feels like forever to someone else. So it's one of those things where, you know, I just want you to get an idea how long 3 minutes is, because we're only about 2 minutes and 40 seconds in right now. But I'll let you go for the other 10 seconds. So I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins.
Any other Public comments? I motion to approve check registry submitted by our fiscal officer.
I didn't have a check registry for their package. Julie, did you have it?
It's in the binder, I'm sorry, did we go get it?
I can go make
No,
a
it's in the
copy. I can go make
It keeps in the
a
binder.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm good.
That was just the listing I
Yeah.
was looking for, I couldn't
It's
find it. I should have said
actually,
something to
the
it.
bank rec is in there.
Yeah,
It's
I-
in the bank rec already.
On this one?
So maybe we should look at that before we pay it.
I think correct. Oh, on this? There it is. You're talking about this one right here.
We should have those earlier.
Is it in the binder and the folder? Here's your binder.
We should have that earlier today.
Oh, gosh, it's a long one.
Or you can do it binder.
She came out earlier today. If you
Oh.
get those early in the daytime, then that way we got time to look through them. Well, nothing else.
Is it the 9/1 or it is word?
No, this is September's registered here for you.
See, this should have been out before. We should have had this price, not at the meeting. We could have had it earlier today.
We typically have minutes presented at the
No,
meeting.
that's where things are changed now. Things are changed.
This was the last
No,
approval.
we're not, no, we need to see that prior
And
to
we,
the meeting.
we have the opportunity to view the UAN reports to get all this information we want, anytime we
So you
want.
don't need a copy, Mark, to send it to?
I do not need a copy of it. It's in the binder for our review.
It's just this page, right? Do you want
Yeah, there's clear numbers.
that right there?
Is that the same thing Jeff She said it's
This one.
the same.
It's this one. Yeah, it's just from the line so far down.
Thanks, Mark.
Should have been out just earlier.
And I think for the agendas, we should be clear that it's a check register, not registry with the wedding. I think, and we'll just present it professionally in that regard. Is the IT company still working on the access to the UAN?
Checks it out.
There you go.
Should we recess or?
Resolution to approve the purchase order.
You have to do
We
your.
have to do a motion for,
Since I gave you a copy.
Check register.
Did anybody, was there a motion on that, Laura, or no?
Well, she started to make it and then.
Okay, stop it.
So let's,
It needs a second.
let's go and get a second.
Okay, I'll second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Evans?
yes?
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
And your resolution is for one.
Resolution to purchase order 2210-1801 to approve the purchase orders. Is there a second?
Second.
And I'll make a motion to amend it. As I understand, Ms. McKee directed the fiscal officer to remove an item she originally had on the purchase orders for additional paving for pavement technology in the sum of $2,498.95. This would result in an underpayment to the company. This amount was in addition to their paving estimate, which we provided, but this is within my authority under the organizational meeting on January 4th, approving up to $2,500 in approved purchases for trustees and fiscal officers, and that is what I did here. So I think it would be inappropriate to exclude that from a PO and not pay this to the vendor. We're already souring our relationships with some of our partners. We can't continue that onto our vendors and not pay them for services rendered when even their estimate, which was an estimate they provided, did indicate that the totals could change based on the measurements. So everything's proper, services were provided, and we need to pay that. The authority to extend that amount was under, again, my authorized authority, up to $2,500 a month. That was what was used.
President McKee, whenever appropriate.
Yes,
We have a motion on the floor.
Oh,
You need
that's
a second,
correct.
or it fails due to lack of second.
You can't discuss it without a second or it fails.
Right.
due to lack of
So
second.
I'll second.
Right.
Discussion.
Correct. This amount is related to increasing the cost associated with a fixed bid that the Board of Trustees
Correct.
approved as a Board of Trustees.
That's correct.
And so if it was going to be amended at any point thereafter, in my professional estimation, it would need the involvement of the Board of Trustees again. We are seeking clarification from our legal resources. And this is going to be an item on November 1st. So nobody's running from this bill. We're going to address it on November 1st, as far as I understand it.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
And again, under the January 4th organizational meeting, each trustee has authority up to $2,500. Just like Ms. McKee, you ordered that portalette for the park without board action. That is within your authority. This also was within my authority, and I limited them to $2,500. I did not exceed my authority, and to even question this, I think is inappropriate. And again, we're going to sour our relationships with our vendors, just like we're doing with our neighboring partners. And it's inappropriate to delay payment and even question it. This is what was needed for the township. And the entire reason that the amounts were off was because due to delays of the other trustees on this board of not being able to get an engineer's estimate in time. So we had to move forward with estimates, and this board delays. We're still hoping that we can get Pike Street and Etna Crest Boulevard paved this year. So these services were provided. I had the authority, Mr. Vance, instead of asking me directly who was involved with this, you sent out a general email playing gotcha and said, just ask me what happened. That's not how to administer a township. So you still failed to even discuss with me any of this. And to delay it again, this board is all about delays and it's hurting us. These services were rendered, I have that authority. Do we want to remove the portalet? No, because she had that authority. I had the authority to approve this additional $24.97.
Yeah, let's call for the question.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
No.
Ms. McKee?
No.
Then you have to roll call.
Roll call.
To adopt
To adopt
the purchase order.
the purchase order as presented.
Mr. Evans?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
Laura, I'd like the official minutes to include that the president of the board denied a trustee his authority per the January 4th meeting and his $2,500 expenditure for the month.
Thank you, Ms. Burns.
Motion to pay bills.
Okay, we didn't, that was for your purchase order. You need to
Right. So we're gonna move on motion to pay, I'd like to make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Mr. Evans?
Well, we got discussion.
Oh, sorry.
Within the bills was the payment for the $24.98, so are you approving that? Because that is within the bills presented.
But the purchase order wasn't approved.
It's not included in that.
The purchase order wasn't
No,
approved.
it's not.
Okay, so we're just
So
not
I
going to pay
can't,
it.
the check will have to wait.
Okay, then I did have a question about this App River bill for $231.93. It looks like we've been making this payment for months. According to the IT contract, Ms. McKee, the IT contractor, that App River was supposed to stop when his fees started. So it appears that we've been paying over $200 a month when we shouldn't have. Is there a reason that that was not stopped earlier to not incur those expenses?
When I spoke with Dynamics has not started charging the township yet. They told me that App River needed to be stopped, and that's what we did. We handled it through Dynamics, and we stopped it, and then now they'll start charging.
Okay,
You have not been charged.
okay. Well, that's where,
Because we weren't, the reason I didn't want to turn App River off without going through Dynamics is I didn't want our Office 365 to be
Right.
shut down.
That's
It's
exactly
part of that it's part of that App River. And so Dynamics worked with us in App River, and they told me when to stop App River.
okay.
So Dynamics has not been charging the township for 365.
But information like that should be shared with the entire board as well. Thank you.
I got a question before we move forward on this bill. There's an invoice here for, that I have to, wait, there's a Bricker and Eckler bill here. Can you explain this bill here?
There's like a fiscal officer, legal.
We don't pay for your personal bills like that.
No, it wasn't a personal.
Yeah, this is a personal bill in Bricker and Eckler. Yes, it was.
It was for fiscal office
No,
matters.
we don't pay for that. That's wrong. We will
So,
not slip
Laura,
this through.
Again, for the
This
official
bill will not
minutes,
get paid. This is a fiscal of Brickler and Eckler that you went out and spent under the township, and you're billing us for this? You can't do that.
Laura,
I'm not
for
gonna pay for
the,
this bill.
for the official record, I would like it to say that the president of the board
No,
refuses legal services for the fiscal
I'm not
officer.
refusing legal service. This is where you sent this letter to our client, actually it was a contractor, to write a letter to force him to give you access to our laptops and to our emails. And this is the letter right here. You went to Brickler Eckler in Lebanon, Ohio, to send them a letter to force them to allow you access to their computers. And that wasn't wrong. And then you're gonna send us a bill? No, that's not, this is not true.
I would like to say something on this.
We're not
Again,
gonna approve this bill.
Ms. McKee, I'm speaking, please. again, at our January 4th organizational meeting, a meeting which you attended and you voted to approve purchases outside regular meetings, between regular meetings and emergencies of trustees and fiscal officers. This is within Ms. Varian's rights. Again, and the need for her to go to outside counsel, please, I'm speaking. The need for her to go to outside counsel is because records requests are not being complied with. She got access to be able to run searches through for emails to comply with records requests, and within 1 day, you had that terminated. Now, since then, I have learned that a records request was made, you replied, no records exist, with a smiley face, which I thought was very inappropriate, in which there were numerous records
Call for the
available.
question. Call for
You
the
cannot,
question.
my 10 minutes is not up.
Call for the question.
Robert's rules, I get 10 minutes.
Call for the question.
Was that in the list, the bill?
No, no,
That wasn't in the list?
no.
So the bills are not authorized?
Those are
We're not
bills.
gonna authorize this.
You were gonna cause more attorney fees.
We're not authorizing this bill. You slipped this in.
There's gonna be a lawsuit against our township
Well,
for
let
your
it be.
actions.
Let it be. Let it be.
That is
This
so
is-
inappropriate.
No,
Laura,
what's
the
inappropriate is
minutes,
that you go to
Laura,
an attorney
Don't
and
certify
threaten
them
your
unless they
board.
reflect that.
You threaten
minutes
your
are going
board
to
and
need
you
to
go to an
reflect
attorney and then wants to pay for it.
that the president of the board has
3,000
rejected verbally
500
for the fiscal officer to have legal aid.
$3,533.50.
Is that
We're not
in the
paying
list
it.
of
So that's
bills?
not in the
There's no
list
check
on the
with
check
that?
register.
It's not,
Yeah,
because
it's
we
found
already
in-
have a blanket purchase
Yeah.
order. There's already
Yeah, we're not-
authorization to pay
we don't
that.
have that, we're working
There's
that, but no, we
already-
don't.
We have a blanket purchase order for legal and accounting fees.
I
That is
asked you,
absolutely
but that's
fine.
not for you to go out.
Ms. McKee, your utter need to control everything is
To
unbelievable.
purchase, this is not, okay, let's
I don't
call
have
for
to
the
get
question.
authority.
Let's call for the
My
question.
office is separate from yours. I'm sorry that you don't understand that, and I have every right to legal counsel.
Okay, let's move on.
You haven't had a roll call.
Roll call.
Where
Roll
is
call.
that? Is that check in the list?
It's not in the list because there was already a
There's
purchase
already a
order.
PO, Jeff.
So where's the check at?
Right there.
The check's in there. You
So
reviewed it.
if you guys don't
Right,
want to,
sorry,
if you
yeah.
guys are expecting your checks to match your check register, now you need to match it up before you sign it.
Exactly
No,
right.
the check
That's my
register that
point.
they're approving is for
That is
September.
my point.
These are bills that have been paid this month that they're signing.
Gotta stop it.
Ms. McKee, if you would comply with
Call
records
for-
requests, there would be no
Let's
need
move on.
for somebody else to go through those records
Yeah,
and
let's
comply.
move on. Let's call for the question. Mrs. Javarian?
Mr.
Roll call.
Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
I guess I'm still trying to figure out if that bill's included in paying the bills. That's
I
what
think
I'm-
what she's saying
Motion
is
for
your check
bills
register is September's
presented.
check register. Your bills don't match that check register.
Right, I
Your
realize
checks-
that.
Your checks are for October, not to match your check register.
The
So-
check register is after I reconcile the checkbook. That's what you're approving.
So check registers are in the past, bills are current.
The bills
It's
that
a
you
simple
see.
concept.
But she'd like a,
Well,
you
usually
may
a
have
simple
requested
concept-
a list of all the checks when
Yeah.
you do motion
A
to pay
simple concept is
bills.
you give us a list like this, and it matches that check stack right there. That's a simple
Well, you
concept.
still have to look at every check to sign it, so I can make an extra list if you'd like, but it will say exactly what's on the check.
I just want a list of what checks are in the stack. That's all I want.
Do you
What
not
he's
look
saying
at
is
the
he
check?
can't do a motion to pay bills if he doesn't know what bills he's paying.
They're right there.
Right, okay. Till we pull it, we
Why don't
exclude
we
that
put
bill?
the motion to pay bill on hold and we'll look at it at the end when you guys can review your checks instead of holding up all this.
So let's hold up
All right.
payment to all the vendors.
No, to the night,
No,
tonight at
no,
the meeting,
no,
at
that's
the
not what
end
we're
of the
saying,
meeting,
Mr.
you guys can look through the folder and make a motion to pay bills tonight. At the end of the meeting, so you're
Correct, so
not
we can
holding
move
up
on.
all
All
these
right.
people.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we're gonna make a motion
Just
to.
withdraw your
So
motion.
he just voted yes, I voted yes, it passes.
No, he did not vote yes. We're going to withdraw.
He doesn't want to vote till he knows what's in the folder, Mark. He just
I thought we
told you
voted
that.
against that thing. No?
You're better off to withdraw your motion instead of
We're gonna
holding up
withdraw
all these
it
people
and
so you
hold
can
it.
look through the
So
folder.
you can look through the folder and you can see this stuff and
But
understand.
who's
everything.
aren't all the other checks gonna be delayed then?
No, tonight, at the end of the meeting, we're taking time, we're taking
Oh,
them
at the
now
end
to
of the
look
meeting.
at it.
Okay,
You're
I
holding up all these people.
We
but
can't
you
do it
don't know what's
outside
in
the meeting.
folder.
We're gonna just do it at the end of the meeting. Thank you,
Okay.
thank you.
So
Sorry.
Can you withdraw my second on it?
Yes.
Okay, I withdraw my
And then
second.
Well, I don't think
Rosalind
you
needs to
can,
withdraw.
according to Robert's
I
rules,
would-
you
I
can't
would
withdraw a
withdraw
second
the
if you've
motion.
already had discussion.
I would withdraw the motion to pay bill.
Can we do it that way legally? Can we withdraw the motion?
We just voted on it.
And but the board is not delaying, you're moving an agenda item, that's
Yes,
what
To
I'm
the
hearing
end
you
of the
say.
meeting so
Correct.
that they can look through the folder of it.
Correct, so it's not the motion is still going to come to the table, it
Correct.
is just being delayed.
But then we have
Correct.
vote, and no vote.
He didn't know what
He
he was
did not
voting
vote,
on.
that's not true. He didn't vote.
And I have to be honest, given the discussion, I don't know where you were in the motion.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, it's just.
Chairman, President McKee, did you put the motion on the floor? I guess who put the motion?
There was a motion and a second discussion, but Jeff was unclear of what was being paid because there's not a list of the bills. He thought the list was for tonight and it's from September.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are two options. The motion can either be withdrawn, or you can vote on the motion. It sounds like it will fail, and you can amend your agenda to add it back onto the agenda at the end. It seems like 6 of one, half dozen of another to me.
Yes.
All right, so we are withdrew the agenda. I mean, we withdrew our motion.
Doesn't it
Withdrew
need
my
to be
second,
clear
right?
what he's voting on?
Based on the discussion, it sounds like you're not ready to take a vote on this,
Correct.
and you'd like to, again, what I'm hearing is not to hold up the meeting while you go
We want to
through
move
the
on.
information. There's some
Present
questions.
here. Yeah.
And so I think the options are to either withdraw the motion or force the question, it is denied, and then it will come at the end of the meeting. You can add an agenda item at the end of the meeting to answer the same question.
I'd just like to say, this is very rudimentary stuff. You should know what you're making a motion for, you should know what you're voting on. I'm new to this, I do. We gotta get it together.
Well, that's fine, but we're not paying this, I'm not voting to pay the bill. I can tell you that. I'm not paying this bill. That's what I'm making clear.
Gonna open up to lawsuit.
I'm not worried about your lawsuit.
Now you're on the work session.
Yes, let's move on to the work session. Licking County TID Refugee Road Phase 2 intergovernmental agreement. I want to present Mr. Bill Lowe's. You want to come up and present?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
So I did have a few exhibits that we can show about the project. The light might be shining in your eyes if you don't move. So the Phase 2 intergovernmental agreement between Etna Township and the city of Pataskala and the county commissioners is finalized, and it's in the hands of the Etna Township trustees.
It's coming up.
It's in the hands of the trustees to vote on it. So I want to give project background, history of the project, and where we stand at this time, although I'm going to sit. I also want to acknowledge Mr. Alan Haynes, the Pataskala City Service Director, here representing Pataskala, obviously, and to answer any questions that you might have for the city.
Thank you.
A couple others couldn't be here tonight, so you're stuck with Alan.
You want Alan? Hi, Alan.
Sorry about your
I'm going to have to stay on script here because there's a lot of data and facts. So I sent an agenda for this meeting to the trustees earlier today. I know you didn't get a chance to read it, and I was scrambling all day with a full schedule, and so I put my thoughts together right before the meeting. The first topic was the project history and timeline. The project started, the earliest email I saw was December 2020, but it seems like it was longer ago than that. Maybe the fall of that. And the project development drivers are up here in this exhibit. All of these developments landed at the same time. If you're familiar with the area, it's at Mink and Refugee Road primarily. Amazon 2 led the way. It's just a little bit south of the intersection. Ashley Furniture is a little bit east of the intersection. Red Rock is north, and so is a development called Magoo. All of these projects are currently under construction, and all 4 individual sites sites indicated that we needed 4-way stops at Refugee and Mink. Also was required were turn lanes at Etna Parkway, both northbound and southbound, and a turn lane southbound at Mink to serve Ashley and Amazon, which would have created a problem with the 4-way stop because traffic was projected to back up into Mink. So, because they were all at once, we formed a group with all the project partners. Etna was represented at those early meetings, and we aggregated the study. And what that means is we took all 4 developments and we added all of their truck traffic that was projected, and we saw how they were going to impact the road network. And what that study said was we needed roundabouts or signals at the 2 intersections. So now we're stuck with a problem. All of them just want to pay for a 4-way stop individually, but all 4 of them create the need for this high-end improvement. And who's going to pay for that? To point the finger at the public agencies, that wasn't going to happen. So we convinced everybody, all the project partners, that we needed to get into a cooperative spirit. So we proposed a funding plan. We knew that the developers were going to pay an amount of money. And so you've got 4 developments, 3 different developers. Amazon 2 was pretty far ahead. They made their site improvements and they kind of got left out of this requirement to pay for the project. The other 3, however, we came up with a formula, and it's based on how many trucks are they adding to the problem. And that is how we came up with a general sharing agreement, cost sharing agreement. Ashley Furniture had 1.4 million square feet and 223 truck trips. That was 32% of the new trucks. Magoo had 1.3 million square feet and 181 trips. They were 26%. Red Rock had 3.2 million and 277 trips, or 41%. So, based on the findings of the individual and aggregate impact studies, the following improvements were agreed upon. The TID project would improve Refugee Road to 3 lanes and add signals and roundabouts at Refugee and Mink. TPA and Amazon would add a southbound left at Mink with a truck entrance. And Etna Township would be responsible for adding an eastbound right turn lane at Heritage Drive and Etna Parkway. I hadn't talked about this. This was a requirement of the study, and it was due to Etna. We kind of have brushed that aside because this is a much larger issue and there's much larger responsibilities. I've talked to the county engineer, and we think that we can do some things down there to improve the flow of traffic, and we're confident that we can make Licking County planning understand this. So this was all very complicated and a lot of moving parts, and it can't be understated that Licking County planning is all over this. Their responsibility is to look at traffic studies and make individual developments pay. They agreed to this, which was only one of the many hurdles that we went through on that. And you have to agree, don't you? That was a big early victory. Indeed. Because they're not used to thinking outside the box, but somebody had to think outside the box because we had this need, and it was going to either be on the governments or it was just going to be great traffic. There's a traffic signal needed up there right now. So that's how we got here. So in general, it was decided that the development would pay a little under $3 million. Basically, it's a third. Etna and Pataska would each pay a third, and the developers would pay a third, with including any grant funds we could get. Alan applied for $400,000 from Ohio Public Works Commission related to that for construction. I applied for a $210,000 grant for right-of-way, and we landed that. So again, the developers and the grants pay for a third of the project, and the 2 public entities are being asked to pay for another third. You can't leave out the county commissioners. Right now, the total project costs are at $9.6 million.
I thought 97 was on the.
Okay. The agreement with the county commissioners is any amount between $10 and $11 million they would pay. We have not gotten there. We'll see what construction inflation does to us, but that is our cushion. Okay. Phase 1, 2, and 3 intergovernmental agreement explained. The TID legally has to phase the project in accordance with the funds received. We're going to receive funds from these entities in smaller bites. We can only get into agreements for the money that we have available to us. So we decided it would be broken down into 3 phases: design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction. Okay. The phase 1 IGA was executed in March of this year. There was also a memorandum of understanding between the 3 project partners, the Pascola, Etna, and the county commissioners. The MOU was a good faith agreement, and it stated that the 3 parties would work cooperatively to complete the project. The IGA for phase 1 included a $751,000 contribution from the Pascola for the design. To date, well over $400,000 of that contribution has been spent. Okay, repeat. Phase 1, we received $751,000 from the city of Pataskala. We are 2/3 of the way through design, and over $400,000 has been spent from that contract. So this is all about phase 2. All right. The project scope of work, in general, maybe I should have done this earlier. All right. So this is Mink. This is Refugee Road. It continues on the bottom of the page, and this is Etna Parkway. It's 1.2 miles in length. The plan is to construct 3 lanes and roundabouts. Let's see. This is some engineering stuff here that I'm going to show anyhow. Here's our stage 1 plans. When you're at stage 1 design, it means you're about 2/3 of the way through. We've also received preliminary right-of-way plans, which means we're about 70% finished with the project. We haven't received October's billing, but we have been billed for about 60%, so I expect a pretty good sized bill for October. So here you go. This is kind of a overarching, we call this a schematic plan. There's a picture of the roundabout. Alan, do you remember how big this is from here to here?
Was that 85 foot?
That's the interior.
The interior was 85.
I think it was 115.
Yeah.
That's all right.
So this roundabout's big enough to handle the biggest trucks that we can throw at it.
Tractors too, farm tractors.
Yes.
There's one down there at Allen Creek in that area, that same one in Rollport, about that same.
Yeah, you know, the designers have figured out how to accommodate trucks. It made the developers nervous here. I don't know if you were initially in favor of roundabouts.
Yes.
You were.
100%.
Etna was not initially in favor, but became believers. Anyhow, these things are all over the place, and they're just proven 2 things. You can shove more traffic through them, and they're safer. In general, crashes might increase, especially at the beginning, but the severity drops. Side swipe crashes are predominant instead of T-bones. T-bones happen when people run red lights, especially at new intersections when they're not expecting it. And that's a very good thing. So here we go. This is again, you go from left to right, all these details, and this is not, I mean, these plans are 200 and something pages long. And there's the roundabout at Etna Parkway. This is called a typical section. This is standing on the roadway and looking down the road. These are ditches. There's drainage improvements taking place. If you've driven the road, you know that water sits around there. We had to do some fancy designing, kind of roller coaster ditches, in order to get them to drain. We've utilized some of the developers' retention ponds out there. It's not exciting stuff, but this is going to be 12 inches of blacktop on, I think, either, I can't read that far, 4 and a 6-inch aggregate base. 8, 1 3/4, 1 1/4. Yeah, that's 12 inches and 6 inches of aggregate. Under drains, there's some, in order to get the project to drain, there's some piping and catch basins included. Anything else we should say about this one?
Water line relocation.
Some minor water line relocations. We did everything we could to avoid a water line. That's a project cost. Again, the preliminary right-of-way plans are completed. The design contract is for $496,559. As of the September billing, we had paid $256,000. There's $398,000 budgeted for consulting and right-of-way acquisition. This is what the Phase 2 agreement is all about. I'll take the opportunity right now to point out that once we execute the Phase 2 agreement and we start approaching property owners for their property, there is really no looking back. You can't acquire land for a public project unless there is a public purpose. And if the project fails to use that land that we purchased, then I don't even know legally what happens. There's been a lot of anecdotal things about what you do, but really, once that process starts, and that includes approaching the property owners, there's just no turning back. I was on the project cost. The construction cost estimate is currently $8,621,795, and that's with a 20% contingency. Construction costs have been crazy because of supply chain issues and labor and so forth. Believe it or not, this is still on budget for what we originally said. We've never wavered from our costs. We fortunately had a very high cost initially, even with COVID that came along and made inflation go, 8% or whatever it is, and higher in the construction world. But we're still within our budget. So the expenses to date are $406,000, and that doesn't include October billing. I already said that we got $610,000 in grants. We had $2.6 million in developer contributions, and we have a preliminary commitment from the State Infrastructure Bank. And when we get into the construction phase, we would go after the construction funds through a loan. That is approved for up to $7 million at 3% for a 20-year term. The payment to each Etna and Fiscal would be $260,000. This project schedule, the design started April 1st of this year. It's anticipated to be completed by the end of the year. That is on schedule. In fact, it's ahead of schedule. We're behind on the right-of-way. Our project schedule said we were supposed to start initially at September 1st of this year. I think I moved that to September 15th. That is behind schedule. If we would have stayed on schedule, it would have been completed February the 15th. Talked to the consultant, and he said he could probably get things caught up. If not, we might lose a month of construction, which is projected to begin March the 1st of 2023 and completed September 1st of 2023. We have a tiny bit of slacking there. I'd say we're about up to the limit on our slack for the project schedule. You understand that when you acquire right-of-way, that property owners' rights are such that you need to give them, it's sequential. It's prescribed in the Higher Advice Code when you approach a property owner that you have to give them so much time to respond to that. I will say that right-of-way acquisition, eminent domain sounds scary. In this case, it's not very scary. because some of these parcels are being donated by the developers, which really isn't included in their contribution. A lot of them are big tracts of development, future development sites. They are all sliver takes. There are some residences on the corridor. After our first go around, we are going to do as much re-engineering as we can to try to stay out of front yards. Is that a fair and accurate statement? Our designer is going to go back to the drawing board on some of those. This happens. There's always some iterations that happen with these things. So, yeah, so that's the schedule. So during the course of things, Etna had wrote 3 letters, various questions. Some of them were about the traffic distribution. I went over that on how we came to the funding formula, basically, you know, how we split the cost between the developers and the project partners. There was a question about, can we restart the project and have the project limits go clear out the State Route 310? It's just not possible. The project is already under design, and the project limits were determined based on the impacts to this area where the developments were located. This was the priority, because this is where the developments were. Nobody's denying the idea that background traffic, that has created over 11,000 jobs in the last 5 years in the logistics area. That's translates to a lot of truck traffic. There's background traffic and truck traffic going everywhere. On city streets, on Pasco city streets, Etna roads, county roads, and everywhere. So we can't restart the project now. There's questions about the road maintenance agreement. I personally agree. I've never seen a road maintenance agreement written the way this one was written. Etna, or Pasco has draft language that you guys have gotten from Tim Hecken, the city manager. Basically, the change in the road maintenance agreement says from this point forward there will be project sharing for the areas that are identified as being Etna's responsibility. I say that this is unusual because usually these road maintenance agreements are necessary because the center line of the road is the boundary of the jurisdictions. In this case, on the north side of Refugee Road is Pataskla, on the south side it's Etna. Well, you really don't want to plow half of the road or mow half of the grass, so we do this linearly. We take, we do it longitudinally. So in this case, Pataskala's maintenance responsibilities were between Mink and Columbia.
Between the 2 columns.
Okay, between the 2 Columbias. And then east of there to 310 was Etna's responsibility. In this case, it said paving and reconstruction and all that. When I was county engineer, we had these agreements, and any capital improvements, including resurfacing, were always split. I remember in Newark, it would go for federal aid, and the local match would be split between the county and the city. This is highly unusual. And in this case, Etna is being asked to participate in funding reconstruction, and they rightfully have said in the future, the same applies for the rest of the road. And so there's an agreement in your hands that changes this. There was a question about affordability. Again, Julie Varian wrote a letter that said basically that the project is affordable. We had financial pro formas created actually by the developers that showed the revenue being created by the JEDs and the TIFs and so forth. And from Ashley Furniture and Amazon alone, the revenue from those developments could basically pay for the cost.
It was 290 with 260 loan cost, so there's 30,000 excess.
So 30,000 surplus.
Surplus, but then the
Every year.
payments don't start for a couple of years, so you build up a surplus.
Right. Yeah, the way that the State Infrastructure Bank makes a loan, and again, a very favorable rate, so you get a 3% loan. What they do is they capitalize this first year or two of payments. It goes back in. It's like when you get a car payment, you don't have to make a payment for a few months, so they give you a couple of years in order for the revenue to start being generated. So then there was a question received from Rosalind Bill Vance about Refugee Road future corridor planning, and yes, the TID agrees that that's a very good idea. In fact, we initiated that until Intel came along or something. We actually started talking about this with ODOT, and ODOT is interested in the Refugee Road and State Route 310 intersection, for one thing. But yeah, the TID, I need to get the board to approve of this, but the TID agreed, at least Tony Flowers and I, that we would initiate a planning study to see what the priorities, when it's going to be needed, and an idea of how we can finance it. There was a question about a provision to avoid the agreement by any of the parties at any time during this project development, and I saw that comment that came in a few days ago and discussed it with all the project partners. It's just not possible because of the things that I discussed about right-of-way acquisition. You know, we can't back out once we start acquiring right-of-way, number one. And number two, shortly after this, we're going to be getting into a loan agreement, and you can't back out of, the bankers won't let you out of paying for the loan once we get into that. So really, there just can't be a provision like that once we get into right-of-way. Again, we've already expended over $400,000. It's tough to, I don't know what we're going to do if it doesn't move forward from this point. We have to develop a backup plan. I've discussed this a little bit with County Engineer Jared Nur, but we would be scrambling because we've received grant funds and we have commitments to the developers because of all these things I talked about in the beginning, and the contributions. They do have written agreements with the city of Pataskala. The money is flowing through the city of Pataskala. In summary, the TID has always given consistent information. There's been no unpleasant surprises about costs or anything else. The county commissioners wrote a letter to you guys. You know, the project is needed. There are safety and capacity issues. One report was that a truck was observed leaving the road and almost tipping over recently. The pavement can't handle it. The trucks will go where they want to. The roads are free and open to the public. We can't stop them. They used to tell me this all the time when I was county engineer. And the traffic flow in Etna continues to degrade. There have been over 11,000 logistics jobs in light manufacturing over the past 5 years in Etna. This has generated millions of dollars in JED revenue, most of which is directed at Etna. The increase in heavy truck traffic generated in the Etna developments has impacted all roads in the area, including state, county, city, and township roads. It has caused background traffic in the area to increase to the point that there are failing levels of service at the intersections of Mink and US Route 40, Mink and Refugee, 310 and US 40, Mink and 16. This project is an opportunity for the state, county, city, and township to all participate for the common welfare of the area, including the Etna Township citizens that travel all of these roads. I'm preaching right now, I'm going to stop it. But if we tried to divvy up costs based on impacts, it would get very messy. I believe this is a good partnership. It is a mission of the TID to support multi-jurisdictional and development jobs. This is right in our wheelhouse. In my experience in transportation in all these years, this is rare to get the developers to participate to this level. They do what they have to do, but to upgrade the mainline road to prepare for the future like this, I think it could be a good model to hold up in the future. I also think this debate has been helpful. The planning study is necessary. I think the road maintenance agreement needed to be relooked at. And I do really appreciate all the questions and the tests that have been given from the trustees. I'm going to stop right now and take questions. Actually, as part of what's coming in the future, just so you know, I think this is very small. This is a look at all of the projects that the TID is doing in preparation for Intel. This is hard to see, but Intel is right here. These are local road paving projects that we have asked the state of Ohio for, just to keep up. The state of Ohio contributed $181 million to the interior roads at Intel, and we have these lousy 20-foot chip and seal cobbled up roads leading into them, and we need some help on those. Let's see. Another project is in and around Johnstown. We're looking at improving the intersection at 37 and 62. We're looking at truck bypasses. We're looking at a better road on the west side of Johnstown that leads up to I-71. This is interesting. This is Thornwood Drive. Everybody knows the 190-year-old bridge is finally been retired. Thornwood Drive is closed. This route is the best way to get from Intel to I-70 East. It's a shorter distance than using 270 and 70 and 161. It's shorter than State Route 310. It's shorter than 37. Sometimes today it has a shorter travel time, but certainly those will improve once we improve the Thornwood Drive corridor. Not to mention the 8,500 jobs that are in the manufacturing districts along the Thornwood Drive corridor. Just hang with me here, there's a reason I'm telling you all this. And this is a big reason. We've initiated a request for a study to connect I-70 to Intel. This big green box represents the road that we would be looking at. The secondary benefit, I hate to say secondary because we were here first. Etna had these problems to begin with. A new interchange at I-70 is something we've been looking at. I had initiated a plan to put an interchange at Etna Parkway in the past. That is to relieve the congestion on 310. 310 only has a 10-year service life left on it. The TID widened it from 70 to 40 back in 2017. At the time, we knew that that intersection at 40 and 310 was going to fail in 10 years, and we're already seeing congestion happening. So another interchange is something that we're promoting and trying to plan for. This is some work that I do for the Fairfield County TID to collect US route to connect 33 and I-70. I'm in a group. Were you at the 20-minute ring group of ODOT? Okay. So ODOT has a planning initiative. All of the local partners that are in a 20-minute travel time are invited to put their projects forward. We put these projects forward. And this represents about almost $400 million worth of needed improvements in our area. This project on Refugee Road is small compared to that. And it's an indication of things to come, not just what we have going on here, but now we have Intel. And Refugee Road is zoned to grow some more if and when the sewer capacities are taken care of. If we pass on this opportunity to get developer money and this partnership, we're going to get farther and farther behind with the traffic issues in Etna. So I guess I want to add that in to show how this fits into a larger picture that we're trying to advance concerning Intel.
So President McKee, if appropriate.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Lotion, would you say it was appropriate then for, I think you did, President McKee initiated some letters and she copied the other trustees to be transparent, and she sent those correspondence letters to the Tascola, to the TID, to the county commission, I think just the TID, Shaman Flowers, and made the point that, the refugee road improvements as proposed are good, and her hope was to extend them all the way to 310. You think that was an appropriate point to make?
I think it's appropriate that we study that. The thing about it is, probably we wouldn't be talking about getting this participation unless it was development driven. In the old days, you had a project that you needed, you went to your friendly ODOT district and asked them for money, and they gave you 80% of the construction money. You paid for design right away, and you paid a 20% match. And it was affordable. That doesn't exist anymore. And it's very rare that ODOT, the federal funds, pays for 80%. In this case, it's paying for zero. We didn't even get any federal funds. But typically, that's getting reversed. It's almost, even if you got the federal funds, you might get 50% or so. But you need to get, highway engineers need to get more creative in how we're generating these matching funds. There's just not enough public funding out there. In this case, we're doing two things: getting developer money, number one, and number two, financing it. And we have a revenue stream, and it's the JED revenue. Water and sewer engineers have found this model a long time ago. They bond and make loans for their improvements. Well, they have a revenue stream. They have a water bill and they have tap-in fees. We don't have that in the highway industry except for the toll roads. The highway turnpike is bonded, and it's being paid for with the tolls. In this case, in this section of road, we have developer money, and there is JED revenue being produced. That's why this thing was limited between MIG and Refugee. And those were the immediate impacts of the development.
President McKee, if appropriate. Yes, sir. And with that point, the Licking County Planning Commission is very detail orientated. It's not easy to get development applications through that process without a lot of vetting and a lot of scrutiny. And they spend a lot of time associated with forecasting what the future impacts are going to be. And I think early on in my brief tenure here in Etna Township, I voiced the opinion publicly that I thought Etna Township leadership in the past did a fantastic job planning for the development between Main Street and Etna Parkway. And those development applications that were vetted by the Licking County Planning Commission identified the transportation studies and the future impacts and the travel plans associated with that truck traffic. And they did so in such a manner that their development applications were successful with Licking County. Licking County essentially said, you have a good plan for how you're going to handle your truck traffic between these two areas. That's why I think, the regional benefit, because you're correct, when Etna Township has been so successful in all the jobs it's created and all the pedestrian vehicles or the people going to and from work, they're going all over the place, and I think that's the importance that the president placed on going all the way to 315. So it's good 310. So it's good you're studying that.
Well, I would just like to point out that since coming into office, I took the lead on this project, but also made sure that Mrs. McKee and Mr. Johnson were made aware at every step and actually met with them. And early on, I spoke with Mr. Lozier about the need for going all the way to 310 and that was going to be addressed. And it's even the road maintenance agreement that, of any changes that might need to be done would have to be agreed to in the future. I'm concerned with the RMA holding up everything now, that even if you say we're going to partner on a project, you still have to have agreement to the scope, the cost, the timing, everything. So we could work at a better RMA, but it should not hold up this process. Again, we've delayed this time and time again, and we need to move forward. And all these items have been addressed since the beginning of the year. All this information he provided, we've had. I know each of you have met with all the entities numerous times, as I have. So we've had this information, and I'd like to say we've entered into the IGA-1 and the MOU, and again, we cannot be known as the entity that can't be trusted in a partnership. Nobody's going to be able to want to work with us no state agency is going to want to work with a grant for us. They'll laugh us out applying it if we back out of this now. So the whole point is to provide the infrastructure, and I would take exception to Mr. Vance's of the great planning of the prior board and administration, that there wasn't good planning. That's the whole thing. We're trying to rectify that now, and this is the project that we need to move forward with. Pataskala's expending a lot of funds, and if you take into account what Ashley has provided, which is on our side, and Magoo and Red Rock on the other, it's about a 40-60 split for the actual cost of this. So I do believe that Pataskala is benefiting a little bit more. That was one of my concerns early on, and I think that's been addressed. So we need to move forward. We've delayed. We were supposed to, I think there was an application for the SIB bond that was in September. We missed that. Pataskala's had to renegotiate agreements with their developers for the funds provided. And if this goes south, if we don't move forward, there's going to be huge repercussions to us.
President McKee, if appropriate.
Yes, sir.
And then President McKee and myself, and we were there with some other folks that are supporters of this project, had a meeting with the county about a week and a half ago, and a lot of what Mr. Lozier had in his presentation were some of these unanswered questions that you just pointed out, Trustee Evans. And I believe, from my consultant perspective, the delay was avoidable, but President McKee stepped out, wrote the letters, identified the issues she needed to have clarified in her leadership mind to get behind this project going forward. So I see the things that have collectively happened with the county, with Pataskala, with Etna Township in the last couple of weeks is really driving this project forward and making sure that we're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's and handling problems, future problems, before they become future problems. So I'm very happy with the progression associated with this regional project, which I think is a great thing.
And we've been dealing with that since the get-go, and like I said, all the information's been there. The one thing I'm concerned about, it's like Lucy with the football, it's like, okay, we've got this, and oh, now this, and that term, it did not come from this board of wanting to pull out at any time. That was one person's insistence. That was not from the board or all those letters. So we need to commit, and like I said, no partner is going to want to ever commit with us again if we want to look to get out of our obligations midway through a project. Nobody's even going to want to start one. So I think we need to move this forward, and I would make a motion to approve the second intergovernmental agreement dated 9/24/22 as presented. This is an agreement between Etna Township, Pataskala, Licking County, and the Transportation Improvement District regarding the Refugee Road project. Is there a second? Then we can discuss.
President McKee.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we're waiting for a second. I think this.
Right, I was just wondering who the chairperson is. That's all. Just so we have the appropriate protocol going forward. I think that's where some of the confusion comes in with motions flying around in seconds.
I'm allowed to make a motion, sir. I'm a trustee on this board. I can make a motion.
If there's no second, it dies, so you gotta get the second for that discussion.
In a second, we can discuss. It doesn't need
Yeah,
to
and there are points of clarification, so I would recommend a second, President McKee, as appropriate to consider.
Who's running this township?
I'm providing feedback, that's all I'm trying to do.
So if I can chime in, I think the confusion, Trustee Evans, pardon me, is that our office prepared a motion for President McKee's consideration, and so I believe President McKee had anticipated making a motion.
Okay, well, I'd just like to say that's another part of the nothing is shared with this board. That motion should have been shared with the board prior to this meeting. Why it wasn't, I don't know. This secrecy and holding on to information is inappropriate because that should have been provided to the board. If you're working with legal counsel and going to present it, why wouldn't you present that prior?
It's all secretive
And all
here today.
Pardon me if I might. And that, so the reason that motion was not shared with the board is that because it was shared with Chairman McKee when our office walked in today. We know Chairman McKee had had these discussions. She reached out to us to prepare the motion based on those discussions, based on all of that work. So it's not a matter of an email going out or anything like that. It was a matter of having those discussions, our office preparing it and bringing it to this meeting today.
Right, and the transparency is absolutely there, because the potential motion, the position of the attorney as far as recommendations for inclusion in the second phase, that was passed out days ago, and it gave the county commission time to put together a letter and get it to you tonight. There was plenty of transparency.
So if Ms. McKee has a motion,
I
I'll
make a
withdraw.
motion. Go ahead and withdraw, sorry, thank you.
Proper procedure, I'll withdraw my motion to hear your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Evans, appreciate that. Motion to approve the second intergovernmental agreement for the Refugee Road improvements, Phase 2, along with any further changes or amendments thereto, provided that approval of those changes and amendments and the character of these changes and amendments are not being inconsistent with this motion or adverse to the township, and to further authorize the President of the Board of Trustees to execute the agreement on behalf of the Board of Trustees. Is there a second?
I'll second. I'm confused about the intergovernmental agreement.
Discussion?
Okay, I'm confused. The intergovernmental agreement has signature lines for all three trustees, so as we pass the IGA 1, so you just want to be the only one that signed it, not the three or the two of us?
Right,
Because
that's
in
how
the
we had it
form,
set up.
Carolyn Carnes approved this as the form, and it has all three of our signatures, but now you just want to be the one to sign it?
Well, we have,
Just for clarification.
yes, sir, correct.
Is that appropriate?
Yeah, it is appropriate. Yes, it is. You want to
Here's
go
what I
ahead?
think. I have seen boards,
Bad,
including my
both sides.
CID board, give the authority to the president to sign on their behalf,
Correct.
right?
That's right.
Right, and Mr. Lozier, you just want to keep this thing going too. So
Correct.
with the adoption of the second phase, you can continue on with the right-of-way acquisition, et
I
cetera.
can't stress enough, yes, but we are going to be here very soon in beginning the SIP agreement, because we will go for the SIP agreement before the Phase 3 IGA. And as I said, when you make a loan agreement, you're certainly going to back out of that, but that is a lot of attorneys and bond consultants and bond counsel getting ready for that. It was brutal when we did bonds instead of a loan for this 310 project, and there's tons of lawyers on the phone. I was the dumbest one on the call, and they let me know it repeatedly. I'm just saying that this is child's play compared to what that's going to be, and we're going to all need to communicate. I think it would be best if there was a point person that this board named to do the negotiation on behalf of that. I'm getting out of my league here because it might be the fiscal officer. I don't know. I would look into that.
Like, just like, so your motion is exactly what I motioned, but you just want the sole control.
So if I
So
might,
that's, I understand, but it's the same
There-
motion.
This is our attorney that's representing our township, if you guys don't know.
so the motion does include,
The changes, the minor changes.
correct, that sort of thing, because from a technical perspective, if the board adopts and approves of a specific agreement, and the question comes up frequently, well, what happens? Oh, well, there's this minor change, or a period or a typo, that sort of thing, and we never want. Well, you gotta wait until the next board meeting, and so that motion provides that flexibility. Well, we don't anticipate anything, or at least don't anticipate anything. It provides that flexibility, and then clarifies the signature line.
And once again, for clarification purposes, I think it's important to recognize that the motion does not include some of the recommendations coming from the development attorney for Phase 2. Some of those recommendations which caused some concern from the county commissioners to put together a correspondence and relayed their concerns to Etna Township in advance of this meeting, very transparently. So your motion is just to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I think this is very important, is to pass the second intergovernmental agreement with the president of the Etna Board of Township Trustees being directed to sign off on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
But the version we're passing is the September 24th, 2022 version.
Yes.
Okay, because I saw other communications where there was a prior version Ms. McKee referenced, and I want to make sure that it's...
Well, I believe Mr. Lozier, which is where this originated,
Came out on the 29th from NERC.
Right.
can confirm this is the most recent second phase.
Right, because that came from the engineer, Carolyn Carn signed off on it, the commissioner signed off on it, Taskell signed off on it, they've already approved the signature of it, so I'm glad that this isn't being delayed any further, and I hope that there's no more delays on the SIB or IGA 3, because this is an important project. So.
Well, the county was very receptive to questions that should have been answered long ago that they took time to help us work through the last couple of weeks, so.
Well, the task was asked about our affordability for the project, so I think some of the questions were inappropriate, but I won't digress any further.
I have concerns about this whole road thing, and you guys have always been against it. I don't think it's the township's, I don't think it's a good expenditure of the township money. I haven't. As far as they want us to go in debt, $3.5 million for 20 years, actually could be gone in, what is it, did they have a 15-year lease, I believe? So they could leave it in.
15 years?
Yeah, 15 years or whatever, so they can leave and leave us hanging with part of that. I hate strapping the residents here with a bill for 20 years. I'd like to see some guarantees that that revenue would be there, and if it wasn't there, that the business would pick that up, pick up the difference to make it up. That were Amazon and Ashley. I know in the past when we designed the park, we specifically said we don't want any traffic going on Refugee because it's the task was road to maintain. We don't want to tear up their road. We made the developer put the little roundabout, we made them go through the park, we made them pay for that road in our park. They paid for all that. Now we want the JED funds to pay for it differently in and out of the park, which will create more traffic, which if you're worried about Mink Street, you're going to get more traffic down Mink Street instead of going out to 40 if they want to go, you know, I don't know, maybe it'll help because they'll go out on Mink and then go north. Maybe they'll go out Mink or out Refugee and go south on Mink instead of going through 40. So you might end up with a lot more truck traffic. I'm worried about that. How does that affect that situation? I'm not sure what's going to happen out there. I'm still hesitant. That's, you know, it's a JED money that we have coming in. We have just enough to cover that. Supposedly they keep saying it's going to be better and more development we have in there. I think Task will have a lot more to gain than what we do as a township from it. That's just my position on it.
I would just mention that the truck traffic's going to be there if we do this project or not. They're developing, and so they're going to go, and Pataskala can regulate the northbound refugee side, which they said they were going to enforce, so they can handle the westbound side. The eastbound we can't, but that's one thing we can look into. But the township can do it because they're limited home rule. It's one of the things that maybe we should seriously consider. Now we shouldn't become limited home rule just to enforce that, but there might be other things. We are expending a lot of funds for outside counsel when, you know, we're supposed to be using the prosecutors, so maybe if there's some funds that would be sent to the county through tax or whatever, that we could just have counsel on our hands.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we can look at, maybe have a work session on and that, but I do think that providing the infrastructure prior to even more development is beneficial, and I agree that Pataskala does benefit more than us, I think, because all that traffic's coming through, but that's just the reality of where our corporate park is placed. If it would have been placed by the highway, I don't think we would have been dealing with all this.
But that was the way to make it go down towards the highway.
Trustee Johnson,
Yeah.
comment on this.
Sure.
Because it's lengthy and it's hard for me to unwind how we got here sometimes too. But it was always the desire of the developer to connect to Refugee Road. That's what they asked for.
Told them no.
And I hate to bring up, you know, the former trustees, but what was said at the time when we had our big group together was that that's never going to happen until Refugee Road is improved. So we came up with this plan. Then it took a life of its own. There was not an option. That cul-de-sac that you're talking about was temporary until this connection to Refugee Road was made. I know that Lincoln County Planning went along with that because planners love connectivity for emergency services and distribution of traffic and all of these things. And so, to me, I understand what you're saying, that it's beneficial if you dead end the road and you can force more traffic to go a certain way, but it is a premise that was dismissed a long time ago. And this is how we got on this path all the way down here. Anything to add to that?
Not specifically to that,
Well, that brings
Remember it that way?
no, more or less.
I wasn't a part of those early talks.
I know. And again, I have to bring that up because, you know, elections happen, and you're dealing with different groups of people, but you're also in the middle of big things. And this is how we got here. And again, you know, we developer, with that manifested itself into was financial agreements, agreements of highway functionality by Lincoln County Planning, contracts were put in place. We're down the road quite a ways here. And you know,
Oh, we've talked,
maybe
you know
that doesn't
where
address.
you know where I've stood the whole time. I've never wavered. You never realize that, right?
Those, I heard from the township's representative.
Okay.
At that time. And if you were thinking there's something and you guys, I don't know what was going on here, but I'm just saying how we got here. I'm turning back from this premise now, the traffic models were done with the connection in place. And the distribution of the traffic is based on that. And I showed you guys, you know, that the development on the Etna side it's all contributing 1/3 of its share. These models aren't perfect, but they're the best science we have. And everybody can say, oh, the trucks are going to go this way. Well, they're not. I mean, not necessarily. They're going to go wherever they want to. And besides that, some of this traffic's coming from the north.
Well, that brings you up to the point about the juncture of 310, and I know that Tom Lee said that he would support you guys monitoring that road and make sure trucks don't go down that road. Refugee, that impasse at the Parkway.
We've already posted it that way.
Yeah. So now that we don't have, that was my other concern, was that 310 would become the new route to 70, which we don't really want. Refugee would be down to 310 and go that way. And I'm sure you guys don't want that traffic coming down and going right through the middle of your city. Correct? So, school board, I was, you know, in this whole process in the past, I've tried to look out for tasks. You know, we don't want to destroy your roads, we don't want trucks, we're trying to force everything through Etna. And now we're saying, okay, let's open it all up so we can all go whichever direction.
And as far as the funding, I'd just like to say too, there was another developer, TPA, that was going to develop on the northeast corner of the corporate park that was going to contribute $500,000 to reduce our costs. That would have increased the JED's revenue. They had to pull out because they couldn't get sewer service and they couldn't extend their purchase contract. But we have the opportunity to increase the revenue in there, and that would, anybody coming in there, I think it would be a benefit for them to have that improvement there. Now, I do believe that any future development there should be limited. We shouldn't have the case like we're dealing with on Mink, with the building so close to the road, so high. So, I mean, we've got to work on bumpers. Maybe if we don't give the height variance to the 50, 55 foot that is required for these automated centers, and that, keep it at the 35 of M1, we could get the manufacturing jobs, and we could get different stuff in there that won't have the impact as much. And, so we do have future possibility of revenue that could go towards that. But again, my feeling is we gotta invest in infrastructure, not wait until it's built out and say, what are we gonna do? And this is a perfect opportunity. And, you know, we've already committed.
Well, which brings to another point. You bring up a good point. That a lot of that development is gonna be on the north side of Refugee.
Right.
Correct? We don't control that. We have no control how far off the road they are, how high their buildings are, any of that.
So
So,
I'm saying we do for the impact on our
I
residents.
know, but we don't of all the other stuff.
Right, well, they've got to deal with their residents and what they're doing.
Because we've heard from plenty of residents, we don't want any more warehouses in here, right? But we're paving the road for more to come in.
You're zoned that way.
Huh?
You're zoned that way in this area.
Right, but I'm saying we're making it.
We don't have
it's
control
easier.
over the task, right, but if there is a concern, hopefully, like I said, working with the partner in that, of saying, hey, maybe these are some ideas for you, or maybe this will impact us. We're dealing with this now, I'll have during trustee comments, Kirkersville is rezoning, putting 2 warehouses right next to our neighborhood. So, I do think that it is a concern, but we put our corporate part there, that's what it is. Maybe we can deal with our side by not giving the variances and even the economic development unless it's a fitting model, but the high priority should be the least impact to the residents. But I said, I think we should move forward with this.
Yes, sir, please.
2 things today, thank you.
Are you on standing? Come up if you want.
It might not make the record.
Yeah.
I might not be
Yeah,
able
go on
to.
the microphone.
Thank you.
No problem.
They're saying you don't talk loud enough.
Name and address would be good for our records, though.
621 West Broad Street, Tasco, Ohio, 43062, Alan Haynes, Public Service Director for the City of Tasco. One wanted to point out, in your comments, Mr. Johnson, the traffic we're putting it anywhere, to paraphrase. But really this is to control the traffic. The trucks are already going wherever they want. Their GPS tells them it's the shortest route. Of course, we just put a bunch of money into Refugee Road, just east of Etna Township because that's happening. So part of this idea is to control that. Another thing to consider here is, while this is partially development driven, we already have relatively high crash intersections at both of these intersections. And as Mr. Lozier mentioned earlier, those are T-bone crashes. So when those happen, those are severe crashes. And while those are in the task force maintenance area, they are shared intersections. So really these intersections need improvements regardless of this project. These roundabouts will really help with, as Mr. Lozier stated, reducing the severity of those crashes. And like I said, that's a shared problem. Sure, we'll point those things out. Thank you.
Thanks. I've seen many of those crashes here too. I drive that.
You're ready. I just need about all of your information.
Roll call.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. All right, I'd like to call for recess if we can. It's, what time is it? 7:35.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Bill, for coming over. Oh, I'll make, can I get a second?
Second for the recess?
Yes. Roll call.
Mr. Evans?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. Thank you. 7:35.
That's all right.
Hey, Gary, Ryan had to take off. Kids.
Coming out of recess.
Okay, we're coming out of recess, and the time is, looks like 7:58.
6.
Okay, maybe I'm going across. What's your phone? Okay, 7:56.
You got the dates back on, Josh?
Yes.
Don't we have to take a motion to come out of recess? Not just announce it?
I will make it. No.
Julie just said you're fine.
A motion is fine.
But I could just, yeah. I make a motion to come out of recess at 7:58, 6.
Is there a second?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we can jump back over into payment of bills. I make a motion to pay the bills minus the Bricker and Eckler and the Pavement Technology, Inc. Is there a second?
Which, the one for,
It was,
it's not a big one, right?
it's two bills here that I'm,
There's one, the
What's the
one,
amount?
payment for $154.70,
54,000.
$154,730.20.
that is for the original purchase order.
And then the second one is for Bricker and Eckler for the amount of $3,533.50.
Wait, so you're gonna deny the 154,000 that we had a purchase order already approved for?
If you make a second, you can go into discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yeah, so you're gonna deny paying a bill that we have a purchase order that was approved, you're denying that one?
The big one?
And gonna cause a late payment to the vendor on that one?
President McKee, I can
Kirk, would you please?
Sure. There was a proposal from a asphalt improvement company, and you approved a proposal for, what was it, $154,000?
The amount of that check?
Yes.
Right, and it specified streets, and it specified quantities,
Correct.
and each one totaled an amount, and the collection of the amounts totaled the 154,000 and some change, whatever that was.
Right.
Between the award of that work and the proposal to pay that bill tonight, the scope of work was changed. And it was changed not by the same Board of Trustees that approved that itemized proposal. And resources from some of the streets within that proposal, one trustee, it's my understanding, said, we're not going to treat these streets, we're going to take the resources associated with these streets and we're going to apply them to another street. And none of that was what was voted on by the Board of Trustees as a whole. So it's my understanding the president would like a couple weeks to defer with the attorney to get some options as to how to approach that bill so that that bill can be ideally, satisfied to the greatest extent possible November 1st. And as far as the attorney bill for the fiscal officer, I have no knowledge of that. So at this point in time, it just seems that's going to be delayed until November 1st as well. Obviously, President McKee, Trustee Johnson can expand on anything they want to say, but that's my understanding at this point in time.
And I can expand upon that also, and I would like to say that if you do read what was proposed to the board, that the final quantities will be determined by the actual field measurements. Now, again, because of the numerous delays of this board throughout this entire year about the paving process, the consultant, even getting the county engineer's certified estimate on that was delayed by the board. To move it forward, I created a list. I mistakenly left off Rome Road, all the roads to it, and I was contacted about that. I told them to go ahead and under my authority, the $2,500, that was done at that time. And what they did is when they hit those limits, they stopped. They actually provided, I think, another 657 square yards to finish off the streets. The vendor actually said that most townships, what they'll do is they'll finish it off, and then it'll just go back to the board, and the additional amount will be approved. And I told them, not with our dysfunctional board. So I approved the excess under my authority, and if we want to talk about changes, I do see the security cameras were installed. There was supposed to be one in that back corner. That was changed.
President McKee, that's not the topic.
Mr. Vance.
That's not what we're talking about.
Mr. Vance, I'm speaking, please. To delay payment on this, so you want to not pay a vendor who provided services to our township, do you want to ensure that no vendors work with us again? Mr. Vance is still speaking.
We want to ensure that
I am
what the
still
majority of the
speaking.
trustees vote
Mr.
for
Vance,
gets
you're
done.
inappropriate. You're not the 5th trustee, 4th trustee, or any trustee. I am speaking. I have the floor. Okay? Please, have some respect. I am concerned that this board is not paying bills that are duly authorized. And again, at our organizational meeting, we have that authority. And you can't just say we're not going to pay those bills. Ms. Varian has that authority. For you not to want to provide her with what we already voted on, what you voted on, Ms. McKee, is appalling. And it's going to put us in legal jeopardy. And you're going around, you're engaging legal fees left and right on everything. But Ms. Varian, her office is separate from the board. She doesn't work for the board. And she's separate. And she has that legal right. And again, we authorize it. And it's not like you said that it's for emergencies. Words mean things. Emergencies in between meetings. I mean, I even hear that you guys are concerned about a $14 payment to FedEx on a $750 million check. This is ridiculous. This is not how you administer a township. And we need to pay our bills. This road improvement was needed. It was approved. If this board wouldn't have delayed, we would have went through the proper process, had the exact figures from the engineer, but we couldn't because of all the delays caused by this board.
And President McKee, when appropriate, a specific scope of work by the Board of Trustees was approved and one trustee on his own changed it. I think that's an issue that we need to clarify how to address. And waiting until November 1st will allow us to do that. I think it's a responsible thing to do.
I do too, and I think that we have been told that we didn't do things right, that we didn't do proper procedure, we did this, and we're going to make sure we do it right, Mark.
Can I ask you where that security camera that we passed?
I don't know what it is about security cameras, so that's.
Mr. Vance, you can laugh all you want.
It's getting to the point where we need to conduct business.
It's not rules for thee and not for me, and this is getting ridiculous.
I'm ready to call for the vote.
I'm ready, yeah.
Mr. Evans?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Evans in regards to business consideration of a resolution for 2022 OPWC grant application.
Well, thank you for allowing me to do this. I've been working diligently to try to put this together again. It's been delayed because we've been waiting on the engineer's estimates. We're still waiting on the traffic counts. We should have had this quite a while ago. Again, board delays causing this late timing. I've registered access for the website to submit the application and move forward with the process. The last one was not put forward after it was approved by the board on election day. When they lost, they just decided not to. So hopefully, this one will move forward. So I move to approve resolution 2210-18-0. What resolution number are we on? 02. Resolution to authorize Mark Evans to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and/or local transportation improvement programs and to execute contracts as required. Is there a second?
So you said there was a delay in the process?
Point of order, I believe there's a second call.
Is there a second?
I'll second for your discussion.
Trying to figure out what
So this is the same one that was delayed supposedly from the previous board that you just mentioned again, was on this.
I think there's alleys added, correct me Mark if I'm wrong, and it's
The-
the same application but with alleys added.
This is not the same application. The original application was only Etna proper east of 310. This includes Etna proper east and west, all of Etna proper, including the alleys. What happened before, the board on November 2nd, election day, approved John Carlisle to move forward with this. The application was started. And again, after the election, when he lost, he failed to submit that. So we lost that opportunity for OPWC funding. The deadline is November 4th. And yeah, we should have gotten all the engineer information, but again, we delayed that a couple meetings because you didn't want to approve the engineer request. So we're late into this, and we have until November 4th to
I
submit.
think I included in your package the engineer's estimates, so you can get an idea of the cost. I added the application.
Well, we need the specific, we have all the information except the traffic counts, and that's, the traffic counts were out, so as soon as Jared sends that to me, we'll have that, and then I can compile the other information. But again, it would have been nice to have this a while ago. But again, just like with the Reclamite application, I'm trying to do what we can to move stuff forward. And by not applying for this last year, that was approximately $200,000 that we missed opportunity on. So
When was last time we were
President.
Please.
Normally, when Mr. Carlisle would present that resolution, he'd give them an idea of what we thought our cost was going to be. That's why I gave the engineer's estimate, so they could kind of see, once you finish the application, what they think. I think it's usually, what, 26% of the
it
other
varies.
part is grant. So
Well,
I'm trying to
It
help
varies
you
based on the points that you want to, if you, of how the point system goes, of how sure you want to be able to get that. So, yeah.
Normally, they have an estimated amount of what they think it's going to be when you apply for it. I was just
Correct, and
trying to
that
help
was
with
with the engineer's estimates. We got all that from Jared. The only thing that we do not have is the traffic counts that were required. So I'm still waiting on that.
I was just trying to help explain that that's not the total cost of the township. That's the total cost of the project. So you're going to apply for probably, what, 74% grant?
I will have to thoroughly review the application process. This is my first time doing it, but there's a lot of guidance.
That's why I'm trying to
and
help
there's
you.
a lot of.
They don't want to approve a resolution that's not saying how much money you're going to spend.
So,
In fact, it was brought to my
The-
attention today that there's no amounts in that resolution, and I explained to him that's how it's been done in the past, and John would verbally explain to the board what he thought it was going to cost.
Right, well, it would be based,
Madam President, I tried.
you try, well, what you're saying is that you want to submit a just standard application of 26% and that's it, and then we'll know our fees. That's not how the scoring works. This is competitive and not everybody gets funded, so maybe it'll be 28%.
Mark,
Maybe
what
it'll
I
be
was trying
30%,
to
but
do was
it's
to
not
get you
gonna.
to tell your fellow trustees what you think it's going to cost. I was trying to help you. Your resolution has no amounts. In the past, Mr. Carlisle would present it with amounts verbally.
Right.
I was trying to help you. I told them that in the past, the resolution didn't have the amounts. You used what we've used in the past. Because I was questioned why there was no numbers in that resolution.
Correct, because I haven't gone through the entire, I didn't even, I still don't know if the board's gonna allow me to proceed on this, if this was gonna be given to somebody else. So, yeah, the due diligence and all the work, I prepped some of the stuff, but no, I haven't gotten final figures, but if we don't get this, we pay 100%. So anything that we get above that to reduce those costs is a benefit. So I'm not sure why this board wants to pigeonhole into an exact amount that I'm gonna apply without doing due diligence and analyzing where the points are, because you could pre-score applications, and if you need a little more points, you could adjust one area or another, including what your match, what the loan balance was, and even stuff like the loan is 0%. Apparently, we didn't utilize that, and I think that was a mistake because it was $63,000 at 0%. that now we're borrowing on Refugee at 3%. And if we're getting 0%, why not take it?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
So the total engineer estimate that's in here is $363,000. Would it be fair to say that that's an estimate of what you think the project?
That's an estimate, and this estimate is incorrect because the tack coat, usually we do the trackless tack coat, so that changes a little bit. I've got to get with Jared and have him correct that. So, but the total estimate is, if we do this on our own, $363,000. So
what are we applying for? How much can we apply for? All of it?
well, you can go up to 75% grant, 25% loan. The more you take on, the higher points you get.
So if we applied for $400,000 and they would pay 75% of it?
If it's awarded on that. But if you go to a 30-70 split, you get more points and that. So what I'm saying is, if we don't apply for this, we're paying that full amount because this paving needs to be done. So whatever, I'm going to do the due diligence, I'm going to research, and what is best to apply for it, that's what I was going to apply for. Not just, hey, I random spin a wheel or anything. It's you run those numbers, you pre-score it, and if we have to do a 28% on our part instead of 26 or 30%, that's what's going to be done. So
after, if you got approved for $400,000 and the portion was 28%, at that point, would you bring it back to the board for approval?
well, we don't have another meeting before this is,
But when
or do we have November 1st?
But if you know the grant is passed, so are you just trying to get what the engineer's estimate is?
All I'm doing is the application for this.
President Key, whenever, oh, I'm sorry.
But again,
But it says and to execute contracts as required.
correct.
So, I think that what you're looking for comfort-wise is a number, so we can say execute contracts up to $100,000 or an amount? Is that what would help?
I have a question whenever appropriate.
I honestly
to
don't know
move this
because I
along.
think it's complicating, delaying it. It's trying to get anything passed in this board is just.
Well,
Sir, Mr.
President McKee, my understanding is you have a resolution providing permission essentially for Trustee Evans to apply for something, but you do not have a completed application to review
Correct.
to direct him to follow through with its application.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's tough to approve something that you don't have to look at.
Okay. I'll move to amend this to change Mark Evans to Rosalind McKee, and I'm fine with it. Is there a second? We'll let Rosalind handle it. The person applying for it should, the need for total control or, oh my God, again, if we don't get this and we don't do it, we're paying 100% of the cost. So if you want to nitpick about a couple percent that you think one way or the other, Mr. Vance, you could work with Rosalind, Jeff, you could work with Rosalind. We need this. We need to move forward on these projects.
President McKee, we're not arguing, the only thing we're pointing out is you don't have anything to consider to move forward. Just a resolution to trust me to fill out an application on behalf of the Board of Trustees. And, as an elected official, if you have to explain that, you would like some specifics as to what you actually approved.
Right. I'd like to know when the last time we applied for it was. Do you remember?
Well,
Yeah.
the authorization was on election day, November 2nd
When
last.
we applied, it would be Orchard Glen.
You got it.
We didn't apply last November because it didn't.
You started the application
He wants
process.
to know when we applied. We never applied. We got Orchard Glen.
Yeah.
They didn't
Applied-
finish it because they lost the
So
election.
we
So we
lost,
didn't apply.
so we lost what Orchard Glen? I thought we
No.
paid Orchard.
No,
You got-
No, we applied for Orchard Glen for 2 years. The first year we didn't get granted, the
Right.
second year we did, so you paid it.
Specifically,
Which was what?
2019, and you got funded in 2021, just last year.
Okay.
Well, 2019, we didn't get it funded. We didn't
And
get
then
funded.
2020
we
application
did,
got
and
approved.
we paid.
Last year.
Yeah, we paid it.
And it was,
Last year's, we didn't apply because they didn't finish the narrative statement. We never applied, John.
Yeah, and usually we don't, what I'm saying is you don't apply.
year, is it?
Well, about every third year,
But they
really,
try, okay.
and usually we try to do bigger projects that is instead of this not very big project, really. We try to get a bigger project and group more and get more diverse areas with better scoring on it. This seems like a little project compared to what we've done in the past, as you know.
As long as you're okay with his amount, let him apply to it. I'm just trying to get you an
But I'm
amount.
saying, but I'm
You know,
saying,
let him
but if
finish
you
the
get it, we'll get
application.
granted
It's
for
not
like a
gonna
couple.
hurt anything.
Yeah, but if you get it, you gotta use it, or they won't.
We gotta-
And then you won't be granted anything
So
for the
you're
next 3
saying if
years.
you don't do this small one, you can do a bigger one next year is where you're going with the
Yeah.
thought process?
More diversity.
Yeah, I can't I can.
They apply, they determine it each year.
I know, but you
Well,
usually don't get.
President McKee, the issue is this,
Okay,
we don't have the application. Couldn't the application, the proposed application be done, be
Well-
completed and brought back November 1st so you can make the November 4th deadline?
What we'll do is, like I said, I want to make sure this is done. I have a motion on the floor to amend my motion to change Mark Evans to Rosalind McKee. That is my motion. So Ms. McKee and Mr. Vance, you can handle this to ensure it's done. I don't need to know the particular details of, are you going to do 0.2% more or less? We need to get it done, so that's my motion. Is there a second? And I'm fine with it. Ms. McKee, take this on. With the help, Mr. Vance supposedly has a lot of experience.
President McKee,
Hey, Mr. Vance, I'm speaking. Mr. Vance has a lot of experience.
are you asking us to take on the road department? Is that what you're asking us?
No, this is an OPWC grant.
Okay, I thought it did, but that's associated with paving, and I'm just trying to figure out, do you want us to take on the road department? Is that what you're asking for?
What'd you do with Refugee Road?
My question, are you asking us to take on the road department?
What I'm saying, if you're not comfortable with me going through the process here, that obviously you're comfortable with Ms. McKee.
No, we
So
We're not comfortable
I'm-
giving approval for something you haven't presented for us to review.
Okay, what?
That's what it is. I'm just saying it's appropriate to look at something before you ask somebody to file it on your behalf.
Do you not think that the Etna proper needs to be paid? Do you not think it's wise to seek funding which is paid?
You don't have any, you can't have a discussion with
That's
no
right,
second.
yeah.
Okay,
You don't have a second, so either his motion dies to a lack of a second, you're back to the first motion. You have no second for discussion. Okay, so it's dying, you're back to your original motion. Are you ready for roll
So-
call? You still want more discussion, Jeff, on the original
Well,
motion?
I was thinking, is there something we can add to it, the roads that we need paved next year, that we can add to this? Or?
You don't have enough time to do a good application. to
Right.
add-
We don't have time to add, the engineer's estimates need to be done.
Gosh, Mark, I'm so tired of hearing, we don't have time, we don't have time, we don't have time.
We don't.
What I'm saying is, it's not killing us to not get it this year, because our chances are better next year to get it. My point is though, is there other paving projects that are coming that we can add to the one and apply next year and get a much better?
We
Why don't you ask
need,
Bubba?
we-
Bubba, is there a
we
road
need,
you
we
can-
need Palmer Road, we need a few other ones, but the impact to the residential, the future development, High Point, that, all that is gonna contribute towards that scoring.
By doing just this here, is what you're saying.
By doing this here, the population around it,
So you're saying it's better not to put the other roads with it, because it didn't help our score?
well, we don't have time this year to do it
You're
because
not gonna get an engineer's
you
estimate.
need to do a traffic count, you're not gonna get a traffic count in time, they're just, I think, finishing up the traffic count here.
Right.
That's where I say these delays are impacting the township and residents. The board needs to be able to make decisions, and this is just more a decision that, do you not wanna move forward with the paving, or you do? Again, if you're concerned about it, take it on. Control it. There will be no more than the estimate provided, and typically it's 26 to, well, 25 to 30% is the ask from what I've seen on our contribution through 0% loan and the rest grant. So
Can you have the application here by our next meeting?
I have no idea. I've never applied for this. The application's lengthy. The township worked on this for a long time before, and they didn't complete it by their application date. So, yeah, but Mr. Vance has especially decades of experience with this, so this should be a no-brainer for him. So does he want to take it on with Ms. McKee?
You have a motion and a second, you're just waiting for roll call.
Yep. Roll call.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
No.
Ms. McKee?
No.
You guys added the road crew and then you have announcements that make it left. The road crew.
Oh, yes, but I'm gonna turn that over to Mr. Evans. I mean, yeah, in regards to the
And you guys have a copy of that
road crew. Yep.
provided.
All right, I move to advertise and accept applications and or resumes for full-time road crew position. Advertisement as presented. Is there a second?
Is this for replacing?
I think we have to have a second discussion. All right. This is for replacing our employee that left on the 5th. He was going to stay till the end of the week. Did you notice that? But so we're down one road crew. It's been working well, having the 2 crews of 2, and Bubba being able to schedule, be the supervisor. As we're growing, we've got the growing needs, and 2, when people are out, we just had an injury on the crew. If it would have been more serious, he could have been out for a while. We're going into plowing season, and that's a big safety concern. So I think we need to, like I said, seek individuals. Bubba knows a couple, but I think we should put it out there. And this is the same one that we used earlier this year to hire the 3 other individuals, except for removal of the felony. And maybe, I don't know, Julie might know, but from my research and speaking to either Pete Griggs or maybe Ben Albrecht, they were saying that the limitation of the felony should not be on there, that you can take it into consideration while you're interviewing, but you can't restrict it. I think it's the Ohio Fair Employment Act, and I think that's been revised by House Bill or something since then. And most places do prohibit that. So I removed that. I did change the forward resume or application to myself, since I would be dealing with that, but just as I was planning to do with the, or what I did do with all the CAC, the comp plan applications, I forwarded it to all trustees because that's what I do, transparent, and we got to work together. You have to have one person, you can't have multiple, and it is open until filled, so I would hope to interview as they come through. And again, the other change, I should say, the one, it wasn't just the one with the felony, I did remove any language regarding that they could obtain a Class A or B within 6 months of their employment. We want them to have that license coming in. We don't want to hire someone, pass their probationary period, and then they fail to get their license. We need somebody with a license to be able to apply. So that, any other questions? Or I asked Bubba to be here tonight for this, in case you guys had any questions. But again, I think we need to fully staff our department, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bubba, but it's been working out great with the 2 and 2 crew, right?
Yeah.
Because that's another thing too, if Bubba ever had to do something, having 2 guys, it is a safety issue, because if one guy gets hurt, another one can address it. So.
Yeah, the one thing is last time we had a whole bunch of resumes come in, but we had 3 positions and you wanted to hire all 3, and here's the 3 people we interviewed. Are we going to interview more this time, or well, bring just one person to interview it that you liked it? I mean, I just want to know what to expect on it.
Well, what Bubba and I did is we went through all those applied and picked those that we felt, we weeded out the ones that we felt weren't or had salary requirements that far exceeded ours, or there's no reason to waste their time and come in and that. So everybody that we felt was appropriate, we interviewed. If there would have been 5, we would have brought 5 to the board. But again, Bubba and I would expect to kind of cull it down, and if there's multiple, and then bring who we suggest to the board.
So I know on the last interview, there was 3 positions and you brought 3 people in. So that was a guarantee. You didn't have other people that did apply, I know for sure, didn't even have an opportunity to interview. So you basically brought 3 people in and interviewed those 3 and they got those 3 positions.
No, what could have happened is the board only approved 1 or 2 of them, or none of them,
No.
and then we would have gone out for,
No, that's not how, we wanted to hire 3 people. We weren't trying to hire 1 or 2, we were hiring all 3 that night, and that's why we interviewed 3 people.
no, we didn't have
That's how you had
to,
it set up.
we didn't, no, we had 3 that we thought were appropriate for the position. The other ones, we did not. So those were the ones we presented. If there would have been 4, there would have been 4. And again, the board, if they disapproved, they could have voted for none, 1 or 2, and then we would have kept the application alive because it is open until filled. Now, the board chose to move forward with all 3, so that it closed. I don't understand the point to that question, but here we're looking at 1. In the future, we're probably going to need more when we have the park and other development come to fruition, but this is for 1 position. And again, Bob and I will go through there and, you know, but you guys are asking to interview everybody?
No.
I just don't think that's sufficient or fair to people that you don't really
So all
know
the
to
people that
consider.
interviewed last time, there was only 3 of them that were worth hires, which is, I mean, that's, the honest answer is yes, that's fine.
Yes.
And that's what you're saying, right?
Of that applied.
Yes.
Right. We could have held it open longer, but
No,
we were deficient in road crew for, so like I said, we had the 1 storm, it was 2 people.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, yes.
I don't recall the last time, did you guys get to see all of the applications and then he just
No.
picked from them?
No.
So what your issue is, you would like to see all the applications, and then if you have an opinion and it gets weeded down, you at least want to see them all.
Sure.
But-
So in the
absolutely.
past, you only saw 3
Correct,
applications?
and that's exactly what happened.
I couldn't
Well,
remember
There was some
exactly.
came in our email
More-
though. I got a few in our
Don't
email.
confuse
You
that
got
with-
all the applications
Don't
were,
confuse that with the administrators.
all the applications were forwarded to everyone. Laura, all the applications came through you and they sat on a folder on that desk. So,
Mr. Evans, did you not hear me say, I don't remember? Did they see all applications? All I'm doing is asking
I'm
them
saying-
if they got to see them all. It's not me
Yes.
trying to play games. If they got to see them all, then I don't understand what the issue is.
right,
That's all
and
I'm
that's what,
asking.
and that's why I said in the beginning of this that I would forward all applications to all trustees
I'm good with that.
for review. So that's why I don't understand what we're arguing about.
Call for the question.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. We'll move on to trustee announcements and comments, please. Limited 3 minutes per trustee.
And, yeah, I'll go ahead, and I think it's very appropriate that you limit trustee comments to 3 minutes. When you control the agenda, refuse to put items on here, hide information, don't respond to records requests. And that is a concern that, like I said, I saw a response by you, Ms. McKee, that there were no records, smiley face, and there were records. And I see that routinely with you taking away the fiscal officer's ability to search email. What are you hiding? I would also like to state that the Village of Kirkersville zoning approved at their last meeting rezoning for warehouses near Zeller's Acres. And it's also adjacent to other residents of ours on 40. One of the parcels isn't even annexed into Kirkersville, and they're attempting to rezone. I was the only one present from Etna Township at this meeting, speaking against it due to the negative impacts to our residents. I believe that the board should have a stance against this, and the next council meeting that will take this up, I believe, is October 26th. So I would encourage response by the board to consider not approving this, because it will negatively affect our residents in Zeller's Acres and on 40. And additionally, Ms. McKee, I believe you are putting our township in jeopardy, not only with our partnerships, but the constant delays. I'm glad to see Refugee Road finally passed, but that was ridiculous what we had to go through. And now you're playing games with payment of vendor bills. This just really needs to stop, and you know, we've got entities that just don't even want to deal with us at all, and it's going to make it even worse. So I think things need to change. Ms. McKee, you've got to be transparent on records requests, because again, that was a lie that no records existed, that you sent Mr. Sly. Outright lie. And your response is normally no records
What I needed
request.
to give to her, so that's all that was on his response, I mean, for his record request.
No.
She got it, so.
No, like I said, you said no records exist, smiley face, and you're putting us in jeopardy.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call?
Yep. Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. The time is 7:31.